yourself in a situation where someone asked you a tough question as a leader, what did you do? How did you answer it? This is a challenge for all leaders, regardless of where you are on your journey. If you're at the beginning of your leadership journey, the middle, the end, how you answer tough questions really can set you apart as an exceptional leader, which is why you're watching this video, or an average leader. And I don't want you to be the latter. In this video, I'm going to share with you a few strategies that will help you to answer those very tough questions as a leader when they come up. And you want to watch this video until the end, because I'm going to share with you over 20 years worth of experience that I personally have had as a C-suite executive, a manager, a director, a public speaker, and an executive coach that will automatically fast track your success as you're moving forward. Now, before I go into these strategies to help you be able to answer these tough questions, keep in mind, tough questions appear from anywhere. They can come up in meetings that you have. Perhaps you're with a board group. They may come up in meetings with your stakeholders. They may come up in confidential conversations that you're having. They can also come up in interviews. They can come up anywhere. So this video is really designed to help you develop a framework, a method, some type of process to be able to answer those very tough questions when they come up. Now, if you like this information so far, feel free to like this video because it does allow it to get out to more individuals. If you are watching this video and it is the replay, I'm glad that you're here. Welcome, welcome. You're watching the replay right now. And there is a point in time in the lives where people join. So just bear with me for a few moments. I will pause to say hello to everyone, welcome them because they're joining live, and provide them with the opportunity to ask any questions that they may have as it relates to this very important topic. One other thing I do want to mention, if this is your first time watching me, I want to share with you something. This is not how I sound. This is not my voice right now. This is not my voice. I'm typically a lot more high energy than this. If you have watched any of my videos, then you know my energy is a lot higher than this. I have to tell you that I am under the weather, and my voice, believe it or not, today I was this close to not doing my live because my voice started to go away. But I've wanted to make sure that I did my part. I told my audience I would be live Tuesday through Friday, to provide you all with some support and help you on your journey. Now, a lot of things that happen oftentimes when you're asked these very hard, very tough questions includes different scenarios that come up. So you might be wondering, what do you do? Like, how do you answer these questions? Well, I want to know from you in the comments below, have you been asked any really tough questions? If so, if you feel comfortable sharing them in the comments below, feel free to do so. Be happy to see what are some tough questions that you've been asked, so we can talk about them together and perhaps help you develop a strategy in terms of how to address these type of tough questions when they come up. So we talked about tough questions can come up in any type of scenario, right? Sometimes they come up in interviews, meetings, one-on-one conversations, or etc. Now, what do you do? How can you develop a system, a process to help you be able to deal and manage with these very tough questions when they come up? There's my first strategy. My first strategy is truly focused on you internally first. And this may be counterintuitive to what you are thinking, because oftentimes when you hear tough conversations come up, the immediate response is to say, this is what you say. That's not the immediate response. There's a bit of prep work that we have to do in advance as leaders to help you be able to manage those very tough questions when they come up. So let's prepare. Let me help you prepare to go to that next level in your career as a leader. The first thing that you need to do if you have a tough question is to go back in time. There is some self-reflection that we need to do, and I'm speaking to you from an executive coach lens at this particular moment. You will need to understand, what are your triggers? When I mean triggers, there are certain conversations, there are certain topics that trigger you. And if someone asks you a question that happens to be a tough question in such a way to where it's already a trigger for you and it's causing you a problem, guess what's going to happen? You will be very, very frustrated with this particular instance. And you will respond not like a leader. You're going to respond in a very emotional type of way. And if you're watching this channel and you're following me or if you're subscribed to my channel, you know that I'm going to help you elevate how you communicate. And so you do not want to respond in an overly emotional way. So your triggers can be anything. Take a few moments and think about what are those topics that you are very passionate about that will make you upset. That is probably not the best topic for you to discuss. So you want to know your triggers first. The second part of this, and as I mentioned, we have to do some prep work before we get ready to answer these tough questions, correct? The second part of it is you have to know your boundaries. So we talked about your triggers. What are the things that make you upset? But your boundaries are just as equally important. You may be asked a tough question that is a bit outside of where you would like to have the question to be as it relates to your boundaries. Now, if you are not quite sure, what are your boundaries? What are those topics that you don't feel comfortable talking about, and etc.? I encourage you to check out a video on my channel. Now, majority of my videos now are live videos, but there is a 3-part boundary series listed on my pre-recorded videos on my YouTube channel that specifically talks about how to set up boundaries. Now, I do want to preface this by saying this is an older series on my channel. My channel has changed quite a bit since then, so please forgive me. It's not necessarily where it's at right now, and I still have some more growing to do. But it's a good series for you to start thinking about your boundaries. What are those topics that are off limits to you? I'll give you an example. So for me personally, if I'm in a business place setting or workplace setting, if someone asks me a specific question as it relates to my children, if it just depends on what that question is and the context of it. If I believe that this question is a bit more on the personal side and it's something that I don't feel is necessary for them to know, it's off limits. That is my boundary. I'm not going to talk about it. So you have to know what your boundaries are. What are those topics that you do not feel comfortable discussing in your business setting, in a one-on-one setting, in a workplace setting, or etc. This is so critically important when you are trying to set up how you speak to someone and how you answer those tough questions. It is very difficult to answer tough questions if you do not have these two strategies in your mind or two topics that you're thinking about. Because oftentimes when we are asked those very tough questions as leaders, it can catch you off guard. It can really catch you off guard and you're not exactly sure of what to say, how to say it. However, if you already in your mind know these are the items, these are the topics I'm comfortable talking about, these are the topics I'm not comfortable talking about, and these are the topics that are going to trigger me to say an emotional response that is probably going to come out not like a leader. You have to know these three aspects of the first part of my strategy because it will help you be able to answer those very tough questions. Regardless if it's an interview setting, a board meeting setting, and etc. It doesn't really matter. Just make sure you answer the question, but you have to prepare yourself in advance. Now, oftentimes on YouTube, people will just tell you what, as I mentioned in the very beginning, tough questions, answer like this. So I encourage you to think about it a bit differently. Yes, you have to answer, you have to respond, you absolutely do, but there's a way that you can respond and there is some prep work you need to do ahead of time to help you do that. Now, the second strategy I want to share with you in terms of how to respond to those very, very tough questions when they come up is the following. It is very important for you to buy yourself time. If it is a tough question and someone has completely thrown you off guard, they asked you a question that was, maybe it was just very challenging, you know you need to respond to it, you're not exactly sure what you want to do, buy yourself time. I teach my clients this in a one-on-one setting when we're working together as it relates to preparing for interviews or preparing them to communicate at a higher level, it's very important for you to buy yourself time to respond. Now, you may be wondering, well, what does buy myself time mean? How can I? It sounds great, right? It sounds great to buy yourself time so you have a few moments to prepare for this tough question you're trying to answer. But how do you do that? So I talk about this a lot on many of my videos. I'll give you a couple examples here today. A way you can buy yourself time is to ask a clarifying question as it relates to the question that you were asked. For example, if someone asked me a very tough question, and I know this is a tough question, there may be an aspect of the question that makes it tough for me because I don't fully understand their question. What I would do in this situation, I would ask specifically, can you please clarify that question? Or can you give me a specific example of what you are referring to? Can you share with me one instance when this happened? Very specific questions. Now, if I just so happen to know how I want to respond, but I need a moment to process it and think about it, when you say those statements, it puts the question from you. It's like almost playing, like you're throwing a ball, right? The person has thrown you a question. I caught the question. I got it. But I don't know how I want to respond to that just yet. So I'm going to give it back to you for a second. And then I'll catch it back. That's a good analogy I would mention because that's exactly what you can do when you ask tough questions. So let's go through this again. Someone asks you a question. Okay, I need a little bit more time to respond to this question. And this is what I'm thinking in my head. I need more time to respond to this question. I don't know exactly how I want to phrase it. Let me ask them to clarify and think about a specific example or etc. And once I throw this back to them, then they're going to have to think about what they want to say. And then that gives me time to think back. Okay, toss it back. So I toss the question back to the person. They're trying to come up with their specific scenario that I mentioned or the specific question or etc. While I am thinking of how do I want to respond to this question. So the thing is, by the time they go through their specific example, you have to multitask. You have to be able to listen to what they say so you can gain more clarity in terms of what they are trying to say, but you have to be thinking at the same time. So you got two things going on in your mind. You're listening with your ears, but you're thinking with your mind. So you want to be able to think of what you want to say, listen to what they say, and go off that specific example. That will make it come across as a question that you are actually trying to answer. So basically, in that case, when they go through their part, they have what? Toss the ball back to you. I caught it. So now I can't toss it back. It's like hot potato. I cannot toss this ball back. Or this potato back. I have to answer it at this point. You only get probably one pass to do that. Sometimes if you do it too much, it'll appear as if you don't know what you're talking about. So you don't want to do that either. So then at that point, you answer the question. You bought yourself some time, you answer the question. Now, my second strategy to share with you as it relates to answering tough questions is it's very, very important. And this is the one that oftentimes makes people struggle and they don't know what to do because they just don't know what to say. And my third strategy for you, and I appreciate you all for joining today and liking the video, thank you so much, is to speak your truth. As leaders, sometimes this is hard. There may be situations or there may be topics that you simply cannot discuss as a leader. And you definitely cannot discuss it publicly. This is what happens. Welcome to the wonderful world of leadership. There are times when there's certain situations when you cannot discuss it publicly. If you can't, just say, I'm not able to go into more detail about this specifically, but this is what I know. And I tell my clients this, even in interview preparation, etc. If it's something that you don't know, you need to talk about what you do know and what you are aware of. So speak your truth. Whatever it is, if it's a situation that's going on and then you've been asked a tough question, you're not sure how you want to respond, and now you've done your conversation and went back and forth as it relates to that, then go ahead and put yourself in a situation and just say what it is that's going on. Be transparent. Be as transparent as you can be within the confines of your leadership role, because as I mentioned, as leaders, there's a lot of things that you may not have access to and you may not be able to talk about. This is something I see a lot of leaders struggle with. I see male leaders struggle with this. I see women in leadership struggle with this. Of course, my audience that I work more directly with is women in leadership. But on my YouTube channel and some of my other platforms, I have male and female present watching the leadership information to communicate at a higher level. So this is very standard. This is very universal challenges that people face when they are trying their best to answer these very, very, very tough questions. And I found that if you're able to at least get started with these 3 strategies that I shared with you, it will help you go very, very far on your leadership journey. Now, I want to know from you, which of these strategies do you feel like you have to work on the most? When I started out on my leadership journey over 20 years ago, I'll share with you the strategy that I had to struggle with and I had to work on the most. Are you ready? So the strategy that I had to work on the most was being able to first know my triggers. I didn't really know that. I did not know that. I didn't have a coach at the time when I started, nor had I even heard of coaching before. But I didn't know what my triggers were. I didn't know what my boundaries were. I didn't. And I know when I first started out, there's probably topics that were personal to me that I probably discussed that I probably didn't need to discuss. And I found that actually happened to me when I was transitioning into another role, into another position, where I found out that my boss at the time, who was my supervisor, even though I shared in confidence with him that I was going to be transitioned to another role, he decided to use that as leverage and report it to his boss, which was the CEO at the time. And it made it a very, very awkward situation for me. So I learned that lesson. And I learned that you have to be very careful about what you talk about in workplace settings as professional and be very mindful who you want to trust. There's some topics, there's some conversations, there's some situations that come up that you just simply don't want to talk about at work. A prime example of one of these is when you are leaving a job. This is something, I don't care what, it doesn't matter what role you're in. This is something that should be completely just for you and you only. I would not share that with other people you're working with. I have seen, leaders, I have seen how many people have been just burned by doing stuff like this. So if there's one topic you do not want to talk about at work, that is when you're about to leave a job. Please just don't do it. Don't do it. I could talk literally live on here for hours about the really sad situations I have seen that have happened when people are trying to say they're going to leave a job and they go tell their best friend at the job. It's a bad idea. But anyways, this is something that I personally struggled with when I was starting out in my career. I'm always very, very, very friendly, very much want to build rapport, but I learned there's certain things you just do not need to say. And I didn't know that at the very beginning of my career. I had to figure that out. And nobody told me that either, which is the reason why I'm here on YouTube to really support you all in your leadership journey. I know that there's a lot of things that happen, a lot of scenarios and circumstances that happen in the leadership world that we simply do not know how to respond to. And I've dealt with a lot of very complicated situations, and there's not a lot of information here as it relates to those very, very, very high stakes situations in terms of how you communicate it, especially as a woman in leadership. But oftentimes it's just not here. You have to have had the opportunity to serve in these type of positions and roles to really see what actually happens. And many times people that are on YouTube, they do the opposite. They may have been in a situation where they have worked with people who have dealt with situations, but they haven't actually managed people or worked with people, built teams. They haven't actually done it themselves, so I have a hard time being able to share with you, these are the challenges that I actually face. So that was my one challenge that I actually had when I was starting out, was that specifically. So I want to know from you, what are some of those, out of the strategies I listed, what are the ones that you felt like were the most helpful? Which one did you like the most? I hope you enjoyed the information so far in terms of how you can really move forward and answer those tough questions. If you can master high pressure, complicated situations, you will automatically accelerate your career growth. Often when leaders are starting out, it gets hard and they get to the point where they just get tired and they're not ready to really focus on those very hard situations because they're just drowning from the everyday tasks that come up with being a leader. But if you can manage how you handle and answer tough questions with some of the strategies I mentioned to you before, it will help to set you apart from other people. You'll be able to advance in your roles. You'll be able to go to different positions, generate more income, and do a lot of other very amazing things as a leader. So I hope that this information has been very, very helpful to you and that you're able to get some insight in terms of what you should do if you are asked tough questions. Now, for those of you, excuse me, as I mentioned, I'm under the weather today, so I apologize for my sniffles. But for those of you who are just joining, I want to share with you what we just talked about. And if you want to go into a lot more detail, definitely check out the live. It has some good information for you to consider. But we talked about how to answer tough questions like a leader. The first was a strategy I mentioned to you that you need to understand what your triggers are. You also need to understand what your boundaries are. And if you don't know what those are, I have a great YouTube video series here on my channel that talks specifically about boundaries. So definitely just make sure you just check that out and take a look at it. The second is to make sure that you buy yourself time. Most of the time when you're asked a very tough question, you might need to buy yourself a time. So I gave you the hot potato scenario or tossing the ball scenario. So definitely want to check that out. I think that'll be a good way for you to think about it in terms of how you can answer those tough questions. And finally, I shared with you that you have to speak your truth. Like, you have to speak your truth. It's very important for you to share what you know, but understand in the wonderful world of leadership, there are certain things, there are certain conversations, there are certain statistics, there are certain data, there's just certain topics you cannot talk about publicly in front of a lot of people. And how you navigate those situations, if you're not sure how to do it, then contact me. Reach out to me for an executive strategy session. I'll be happy to give you some insight in terms of where you are and how you can transition to that next level in your career. And then also, if you're ready to go into a deeper transformation, maybe you are in a place in your leadership journey where you're struggling. Maybe you're struggling and you're in a senior leadership role and you're not really quite sure of why you're struggling. There's something going on with how you're communicating it, etc. Then this will be a great opportunity to have a conversation with me about the Real Executive Woman. This is my transformative leadership experience that I do with women in leadership to help them be at that next level in their careers, not only communication-wise, but leadership-wise, so they can start to develop themselves as the leaders that they want to be. Now, this is definitely a program that will completely change your life. If you're really, truly wanting to elevate, this is a great place to start. I share on my channel all the time, and I talk to my clients and I talk to prospective clients also. I share with them this, and this is the very honest perspective I would share with you as it relates to being a leader. People become great by how they communicate. And if you communicate at a higher level than your peers, you will absolutely stand out from everybody else. Now, if you like this information, then feel free to like this video. I see some of you have liked it already, so thank you so much. I appreciate you. And let me know what you want to learn more information about. If you are struggling with anything on your leadership journey, whether you are a woman in leadership or a man in leadership, let me know in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to be able to have a conversation or do a video just for you as it relates to the topic. And I'll make sure that I give you a shout out in the video. Just let me know what you all want to talk about and what insight that you may need some support with. So definitely take a look at the boundaries video. It will be helpful for you. As I mentioned, please forgive me. It is an older video I did on Instagram Live. So it's a little bit different than what I do now, but it still has some really great information in it as it relates to how to establish those boundaries, because this is very, very important if you're trying to figure out how to answer those very tough questions like a leader. So I'll see you all next week. Hopefully I will be feeling more like myself and not under the weather. I appreciate y'all being patient with me. And as I mentioned, if you're new, this is not my energy. It's not. I'm normally a lot more high energy than that. It's just the cold the cold flu. One of my kids had the flu. It's definitely touched me. That's for sure. And so I'm not as high energy as I normally would be. But I'm hoping that I feel better. I appreciate you all for watching and listening to me. Not as a high energy as I normally would be. It's probably not as lively as normal, but I appreciate you all for being here, being supportive, and just taking a few moments out of your day to spend with me to truly elevate yourselves professionally as leaders. This is why I'm here. I'm here to support you all and help you go to that next level in your leadership journey. So I'll see you all next week, and have an amazing weekend. Bye for now.